is something you used to think people were over-exaggerating about, until you experienced it yourself.
Giant sequoia trees. When I finally saw them in person, they looked fake. I could not comprehend a tree of that size. Loneliness. Dentist chimming in tooth pain. I knew academically how painful they could be, until it happened to me. You know that grief you see in dramatic movies when someone gets horrible news via phone call and just crumples to the floor wailing? Always felt like melodrama to me, until I got the call that there had been an accident and my dad had died. Edit. Thank you for all your messages and sharing your own stories. I'm going to try to respond to everyone. I'm sorry for your loss. It's really terrible to experience. I had the opposite problem when my mother passed from an accident. I thought I would just crumble. But it was just so surreal that my brain couldn't seem to emotionally process it. I remember being in the receiving line and just looking over at her and having this "what the fuck is happening" sort of bewilderment, often the people I've cared most about. I've been really surprised at how my grief played out. It's been about 9 months since, and I still have a sort of weird sense about it, like I haven't called mom in a while, I should do that this weekend, and then remembering. Or being surprised that she's not in my list of favorite contacts on my phone. The physical pain of getting older, damn, the emotional pain too. I get so nostalgic and teary over the past and how much has changed. It's a weird grieving process over losing your youth and the way things were. How much stress can fuck you up physically? When I was a kid, my mom had a horrendous job in a call center that made her so stressed she could barely get out of bed on her days off and was plagued by a mysterious allergy the doctors couldn't figure out. I figured it was depression at the time, but as an adult, I know it was literally stress because then it happened to me. My last job fucked up my wages and left me with pretty much nothing for food and bills after my rent for about 2 months. I got so stressed out I shed almost all the skin in my mouth, lips, had shooting pains in my arms, my skin broke out, my nails became really brittle. I was constantly nauseous and really gassy, bloated with no appetite. Chest pain so bad I was sure it was a heart attack. And then like the day after the next payday, I suddenly felt pretty much fine because I wasn't as stressed anymore. That was in April, and by mid-May, I was 99% back to normal. My jacked up nails are still a little janky, but they grow slow. I had a shit boss screaming, making people cry, making coworkers compete really unhealthily, and I was absolutely dependent for months. I simply needed the money to live. My hair was falling out, and I got weird spots on my body. Luckily I got it all back. Chronic illness. There is absolutely no way you can truly understand the impact unless you experience it. I like the part where I've been in pain for 25 years, so I can kind of still function even when it's really bad. And then I try to get an ambulance guy or an admin assistant in a hospital to believe that I'm having an emergency, and they're like, "You seem fine. Take some Tylenol and go home," until I finally get a blood test, and then the doctor goes, "Holy crap, you're about to die. Why didn't you come to the ER sooner?" Like, listen up MF. I had to take a goddamn Uber to get here and then argue with reception for an hour. And no one believes you. It's been years, get over it. I battled cancer for 4 years, and yes, it's in remission now, but my body is trashed and done for. No immune system, multiple surgery taking chunks out of my body, experimental treatments with no real data on long-term side effects. Every single time I catch a cold, I either get pneumonia or am laid out for weeks. Constantly in pain, constantly sick. But no cancer, so I guess I won and need to quit being a baby apparently. It's amazing how once you're in remission you just get dropped by everyone now that you're not going die. I can't be the only one who feels this way, right? Insomnia. Oh, what I would give to not have insomnia. I go through periods of sleeping more or less normal. And then for seemingly no reason, I'll have weeks on end where a good night of sleep is impossible. I'll get 2 to 4 hours of sleep despite pills, tea, baths, white noise, meditation, everything. I'll spend my days so deeply, utterly exhausted that I can barely think. And my whole body feels heavy, lifeless. It's hard to feel any kind of emotion, let alone happiness or contentedness. Just existing as a human-shaped puddle until the time when I can go to bed and hope to God that tonight will be different for some unknown reason. Insomnia is a real bitch. It will tank your mental health and send you spiraling real fast. I've had insomnia on and off for years for seemingly no reason as well, and it's beyond frustrating. I hesitate to tell anyone why I feel like shit because I get the usual Googled suggestions of just exercise, just meditate, just avoid electronics for X hours before bed. When you've had it for years, you've tried everything you can think of. I wish I could be more open about it without being made to feel like I'm not trying hard enough. Insomnia can have a mind of its own, and what works for one person may not work for another. And this goes for many other issues that people tend to be judgmental about, like mental health. Seeing stars. Thought it was an exaggeration until I had a very bad coughing fit. And suddenly I'm seeing stars. Perfectly fitting terminology. Edit. Thanks for the upvotes, and really cool to see all of your stories. Such a whimsical neurological phenomenon, right? I get them occasionally after sneezing, or taking a big shit, or as it happened my first time, just stepping down from a curb. Sometimes they're just zipping around randomly. Other times they are moving together in an extremely symmetrical pattern. Happened to me when I was running really hard. I looked up and my first thought was, holy shit, they really are stars. That the older you get, the faster your life goes by. Please is slow. Break your routine. It's hard to do, but big changes will make things seem to slow down. How great homegrown fruits and vegetables are. I figured that was just gardener talk justifying their time-consuming hobby. Then I bought a house where the previous owner had a vegetable garden and orchard. That spring I saw these things coming up out of the ground and thought, is that asparagus? Cut them and cooked them, and they were incredible then. The plums ripened. I never even liked plums, but I thought I'd try one, so I pulled it off the tree and bit into it. Well, that's not bad. Pretty juicy, fresh-picked fruit is far juicier than the stuff in stores. So anyway, I ate another plum and then another, and the next thing I know I've been standing there, eating plums for like 5 minutes, and the juice is literally, I mean literally, running down my arms and dripping off my elbows. And those hard and sour strawberries you buy in stores are nothing like soft, sweet strawberries. Slightly warm from the sun that never make it into the house because you just sit in the garden, eating them as fast as you pick them. And of course, tomatoes. Oh my god. Once you start growing your own, you will never be able to buy another one in a supermarket. In case you were wondering, a significant chunk of the reason for this is that fruit tends to be picked just before it becomes fully ripe, so that it'll last long enough to make it to the store, especially if it's one that they're going to need to put away, so that there are fruits in the middle of the off-season. Honestly, addiction. When I was in junior high, my dad had an injury at work that ultimately resulted in a pretty bad opiate addiction. I didn't understand how someone could prioritize a pill to such an extent, or how awful they could be if they didn't have it. And then I grew into a person with crippling anxiety who discovered Xanax. The rest is a decade-long story of how I learned empathy and a lot of other hard lessons. But to have been so naive, sigh. Migraines. I have migraines and at one point, a long string of cluster headaches. My doctor gave me infinite codeine. I was sick as shit for 2 weeks with brain exploding. So I was downing those pills like they were water, chug chug, to a day every day. And after the cluster headaches died down, I stopped taking them. And then I got really sick. Sick in a way I've never been sick before, like the worst flu ever, but no sneezing, just aches. Tremors, felt like I was going to throw up, headaches regular kind. Like a coffee headache but worse. I couldn't sleep, food made me nauseous, noise was annoying. Everything was awful. I felt irritated at everything, everyone, and sick as shit. Then I had one last headache, so I took one last pill. And it was exactly like that quarantine episode of It's Always Sunny. Fuck, I felt great. In just a few hours I went from I wish I was dead to life is wonderful. And I am the picture of youthful exuberance. That's when I realized what I was experiencing was withdrawal. It was so hard after that, because I realized I feel like shit. But there's a pill in the drawer 2 meters away that will make me feel 100% healthy and more in 20 minutes. Just gulp, and I'm better. I didn't take it because I knew. I could just tell. That was how it would start. I really didn't think addiction was such a big deal before that experience. I just figured it's like not having coffee or something, you know? Something you just have to power through. No big deal. But having had it, I totally get why people become addicts. I know because I was like almost there myself. It sucks and it's totally not your fault. Being suicidal. As a stupid teen, it made seem to me in most cases. To consider it as simply an overreaction, like I'm so pissed off, I'll just TMS. Like, don't be dramatic, just chill and you'll snap out of it. Think of your family, friends, the good things you have. PSA, do not fucking say those things to a suicidal person. It will almost certainly result in the opposite of the intended effect. In my mid-20s, my mental health took a massive nosedive, and I learned that it most certainly is not a case of being dramatic during a case of the blues. It's your brain winning an argument against itself and insisting death is the best choice. No more pain, no more being a burden. Selfish not to end it all. I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to want to live anymore, if that makes sense. For 2 years I was on suicide watch, my meds monitored, as I tried to remind myself daily that this was my mental illness lying to me, and it would be temporary. It's immensely painful, I swear. The mental pain would become so strong you could feel it in your chest and throat, like a very deep bruising after being punched. I've spoken to other people who experienced similar symptoms and thanked God. I thought I was going nuts if I could physically feel mental illness. It was all in all a horrible experience, and still pretty mentally ill. But I take care to avoid getting to that stage again. One believes you can't truly understand being suicidal unless you've experienced the feeling. But it's something I hope nobody here ever does, or has to consider. I'm alive because I'm a coward, and honestly, I'm okay with that. Every time I tried, I'd pussy out at the last second, because the existential concept of death terrified me more than the guaranteed pain of continuing to live. Now I'm on drugs and it's better. I still think death would be easier, but my life is better than it was a year ago. And that is enough to make me curious about how it will be in a year. I don't have to convince myself every morning that I can endure one more day. My dog saved me. I had everything figured out. I'd been slowly erasing my existence and preparing for disappearing, but the one part I couldn't solve was what to do about my dog. Because I knew she wouldn't understand that I was never coming home. I knew she was the only one I could be sure wouldn't be better off without me, even people close to me. I could see and recognize that I was being a total asshole, and that I think was part of me trying to push them away so they didn't notice me fading away. So I knew they'd hurt, but I also knew they did recognize me as the toxic person that I was. And I was. I wish I could say I wasn't, but I was. But my dog didn't care. She was always pleased to see me come home, and unequivocal about how her favorite thing was quality time with me, and so I kept coming home. I didn't have any hope left, and no thoughts to a better future. I just knew that I couldn't finish the job when my dog needed me. I did get sorted, but I truly hadn't appreciated just how far down the rabbit hole I'd gone. How distorted and dark my world had become. I don't think anyone can until they've been there themselves.